She wasn't crying. That was the first thing Jang Dong-soo noticed. Not the bruise, not yet. It was the way she set the tea down. Steady hands, lowered eyes, shoulders pulled back like someone who had learned long ago that falling apart was a luxury she could not afford. He had seen men beg for their lives in this office. He had watched rivals crumble under silence alone. But this woman, this quiet, precise, invisible woman, who had served his morning tea for 7 months without a single complaint. She moved through his space like someone carrying something heavy that no one was allowed to see. He almost let it go. He almost reached for the cup, opened his briefcase, moved on. Then she turned, and the light from the floor-to-ceiling window caught the left side of her forearm, and he saw it. 4 fingers, pressed deep into the skin just above her wrist, purple-blue at the center, yellowing at the edges. Not new. That bruise was at least 2 days old. Pause for a second. If that image just hit you, the steady hands, the quiet bruise, the silence she carried, don't sit there and watch like it's just another story. Tell me in the comments, have you ever hidden something painful and still shown up strong the next day? And if stories like this matter to you, subscribe right now and stand with this community. Because the people who stay here don't ignore what's uncomfortable. They face it. Dong-soo set down his pen. Come here. Annabelle Chinello stopped walking. She did not turn around immediately. He watched her take a breath, slow, deliberate, the kind of breath that was really a decision. And then she turned. Sir? Your arm. Her eyes dropped to her forearm for exactly half a second. Then they came back up to his face. Neutral, composed, the expression of a woman who had been asked about her wounds before and had learned that honesty rarely helped. It's nothing. It's finger-shaped. Silence. Dong-soo stood. He was not a tall man by Western standards, but he filled space differently, the way men do when every room they enter has always rearranged itself around them. He walked around the desk slowly, not toward her, just around it, and stopped near the window, giving her space, watching her. Who touched you? It doesn't concern you. You work in my house. With respect, sir, she said, and her voice was quiet, but it had an edge in it, something that had been sharpened by years of having to be polite while being disrespected. My body is not part of my employment contract. He looked at her for a long moment. She did not look away. Most people looked away. Sit down, he said. I have 3 more floors to Annabelle. It was the first time he had used her name. She had been here 7 months. 7 months of sir and ma'am, and the tea, and the silence, and the careful invisibility she had constructed like armor. He had never used her name. She sat down. Dong-soo did not sit. He stood at the window and looked out at Seoul, the city he had inherited in blood and rebuilt in steel. And he said, without turning around, I have a board meeting in 18 minutes. Federal audit in 3 days. A rival family that has been watching my shipping lines for 2 months. He paused. And I am standing here asking you about a bruise. He turned. That should tell you something. Annabelle looked at him. Really looked at him. Maybe for the first time in 7 months. She had trained herself not to. She had trained herself to see the desk, the tea tray, the door. Never the man, never the eyes. Because eyes asked questions, and questions required answers, and answers required trust. And trust was something she had run out of a long time ago. It was an accident, she said. He picked up his phone, pulled up something, turned the screen toward her. It was the security footage from the east hallway. Timestamp. 2 days ago, 9:47 a.m. 22 seconds of static. The camera glitched. she said carefully. Security cameras in this building do not glitch. His voice was flat. They are wiped, manually, by someone with executive clearance. He set the phone down. An accident does not require executive clearance to disappear. The room was very quiet. Annabelle's hands were folded in her lap, and she was looking at them now, and he watched something move across her face. Not fear, not sadness exactly. Something older than both. Something that looked like exhaustion. The particular exhaustion of a person who has been waiting for someone to notice and has simultaneously been hoping they never do. I handled it, she said. You shouldn't have had to. She looked up sharply, like the words surprised her, like kindness aimed directly at her, still had the power to catch her off guard. Before she could respond, his phone vibrated, then again. Then his assistant's voice came through the intercom, clipped, urgent. Sir, the board is assembling. Mr. Bayek is requesting your presence immediately. Yeah, there's a situation with the Pacific accounts. Dong-soo did not move for 3 full seconds. Then he straightened his jacket, picked up his briefcase and walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the frame. Don't go anywhere today, he said. Not a request. Then he was gone. Annabelle sat in his chair. In the chair of Jang Dong-soo, the most feared man in organized Korean finance, the man whose name made shipping executives cancel vacations and whose foundation donations made senators return calls. And she sat in his chair, and she breathed. She pressed her right hand over the bruise, felt the shape of it. 4 fingers. She had not told anyone. She had not screamed. She had not reported it, because she knew exactly what happened to domestic staff who filed complaints against the names on those board plaques. She had simply gone back to her floor, finished her work, and carried it. The way she always carried everything. The way you learn to carry things when you grow up watching your mother carry them, and her mother before that, and the whole long line of women in your family, who were strong, because the world gave them no alternative. Annabelle stood, straightened the chair, walked to the door. She stopped. She turned back and looked at the room, the desk, the window, the city below, and something passed through her eyes that she did not allow herself to name. Then she picked up the empty tea tray and walked out. The board meeting was already burning by the time Dong-soo entered the room. 12 people around a mahogany table that cost more than most people's apartments, and every single one of them was talking at once. In screens on the wall showing shipping routes, account summaries, red numbers cascading like a quiet disaster. His head of Pacific Operations, Young Hwan, was standing at the front, looking like a man who had not slept in 2 days, because he had not. Dong-soo sat. The room quieted. Explain, he said. Jung Hwan pulled up the accounts. 47 million across 6 international lines, not missing, displaced, moved through a series of shell transactions that cycle back to the same 3 holding companies. We've been trying to trace the endpoint for 16 hours. It doesn't trace cleanly. Theft? That's what we assumed initially. Jung Hwan hesitated. But the pattern doesn't match theft. Theft hides. This is... He paused, frustrated. This is something else. We don't know what. Dong-soo looked around the table. 12 people. His CFO. 2 legal heads, 4 senior board members, 2 compliance officers, 2 external advisors, and Madame Oh Soo-jin, sitting at the far end of the table in a cream blazer, her hands folded precisely in front of her, watching the chaos with the particular patience of someone who already knew how it ended. Oh Soo-jin, 61 years old, matriarch of the Oh political family, the woman his family elders had spent 3 years maneuvering him toward. The arranged marriage that everyone in this building was waiting for him to announce. She met his eyes from across the table and smiled slightly. He looked away. "Does anyone have a working theory?" he asked the room. Silence. The expensive, embarrassed kind. The door opened. Everyone turned. Annabelle stood in the doorway with a tray, a refill for the coffee station along the far wall, and standard morning service. She was supposed to be invisible. She was always supposed to be invisible. She stopped when she saw the screens. Her eyes tracked the numbers, quickly, very quickly. Then she looked at the room. "I apologize for the interruption," she said quietly and began to step back. "Wait." Dong-soo said it before he understood why. He had watched her eyes move across those screens. He had seen something happen in her face. Recognition, specific and immediate. The look of someone who has seen this pattern before. "Look at the screen," he said. "Sir, look at it." She looked. Her hand on the tray was perfectly still. "What do you see?" he asked. The room had gone very quiet. 12 powerful people watching a woman in a domestic uniform be asked a question they themselves could not answer. Woo-oh Soo-jin's smile thinned slightly. Annabelle looked at Dong-soo, then at the screen, then back at him, and he watched her make a decision. Watched her weigh the cost of speaking against the cost of silence, and choose, perhaps against her better judgment, to speak. She set the tray down on a side table. She walked to the screen. She pointed to a cluster of 3 transactions. These 3 here cycle back every 72 hours. Not randomly, on schedule. That's not theft architecture. Theft cycles break pattern to avoid detection. She traced a line across the screen with her finger. This is structured displacement. Someone is moving money in a loop to make the accounts appear active for audit purposes, while the actual endpoint capital is being held in a dormant trust. She looked at Jung-hwan. "Do you have access to the holding company registration dates?" Jung-hwan stared at her. Yes." "Pull them." He pulled them. She pointed. "Formed 14 months ago. 14 months is exactly 1 quarter before your last federal review cycle. Someone timed this to survive 2 audit windows before being detectable." She stepped back. "The money isn't gone. It's been staged. Someone is creating the appearance of functional capital flow while structuring a position to pull equity quietly over the next 18 to 24 months. Total silence. Dong-soo looked at her. "How do you know this?" he asked quietly. She looked at him for a moment. "I've seen it before," she said, and nothing else. She picked up the tray. She walked to the coffee station, refilled it without a sound, and walked out of the room. After the door closed, and no one spoke for 10 seconds. Then Jung-hwan said slowly, "She's right. The holding company registration dates." He clicked through his screen. "They align exactly. This is staged displacement, not theft." He looked at Dong-soo. "How did she—" "Find out who she is," Dong-soo said. Oh Soo-jin spoke for the first time. "She's domestic staff." Her voice was perfectly pleasant. "Surely we have actual analysts who can take it from here." Dong-soo looked at her. "Find out who she is," he repeated to his security head. "And then, run the holding company trace. I want the endpoint by this afternoon." He stood. The meeting continued, but his mind was already elsewhere. 2 floors down, Annabelle refilled the 3rd station of the morning and told herself she had made a mistake. She had spent 18 months being invisible. Invisible was safe. The invisible was the only currency she had left after everything else had been taken. "You don't see me. I don't threaten you. We both get what we need from this arrangement." That was the deal she had made with this city, with this job. with this life. And she had just walked to a screen in front of 12 board members and drawn a map. Her phone buzzed, a text from her nephew, Auntie Belle. School says the tuition installment is late again. They said if it's not in by Friday, they'll withdraw my enrollment. She closed her eyes for 2 seconds, opened them, typed back, "I'll handle it. Focus on your exam." She put her phone in her pocket and picked up the tray and kept moving, because that was what you did. You kept moving. You handled it. You did not fall apart in a hallway where someone might see you, because the moment you fell apart, you were no longer competent. You were a problem, and problems got dismissed. Her sister Adaizi would have said, "Belle, why are you always the one holding the wall up?" But Adaizi was gone, and the wall still needed holding. She didn't know that 2 floors up, in a private office adjacent to the boardroom, Dong-soo was on the phone with his head of background investigations. "Her name is Annabelle Chinello," the investigator said. 38. Nigerian-American. Lagos-born. Raised in Houston, Texas. She came to Seoul 14 months ago on a work visa initially, transitioned to domestic employment 8 months later. A pause. She was previously a senior compliance analyst. Tier 1 clearance. She worked for Meridian Capital Partners in New York for 6 years. Dong-soo was quiet. Or what happened at Meridian? She filed an internal discrimination report, documented a pay disparity scheme, 32 Black and Latinx employees across 3 divisions being systematically underpaid relative to comparable white counterparts. She built the case herself. Watertight. Another pause. The company settled privately. She was let go 8 months later. Standard restructuring language in the termination. But she was quietly added to an industry reference blacklist. Informal, untraceable, but consistent. She applied to 14 positions in New York and Chicago over the following year. None of them interviewed her past the first round. The silence in the room was different now. She didn't expose them publicly, Dong-soo said slowly. No, she had grounds for a lawsuit. She didn't pursue it. The investigator hesitated. There's something else. She has legal guardianship of a minor, her nephew. Her sister died approximately 2 years ago. Medical incident. The record notes inadequate diagnostic response. He paused. The hospital in question received a philanthropy grant 18 months ago from a foundation connected to your shipping operations. Dong-soo set down the phone. He sat very still. Outside his window, Seoul moved at its relentless pace. Cranes and traffic and neon, and all the machinery of a city that did not pause for private reckonings. He thought about a woman who built a watertight legal case against her own employer, and then chose not to detonate it. Who came to Seoul after her career was erased? Who showed up 7 months ago for a domestic position, overqualified by 6 levels, and said nothing? Who stood in front of his board this morning and dismantled a financial conspiracy in 2 minutes while holding a coffee tray? Who had a bruise on her wrist shaped like someone's fingers? Someone with executive clearance. He thought about the camera that had been wiped. He thought about Oh Soo-jin sitting at the end of the table with her folded hands and her thin smile. He picked up his phone and called his most trusted lieutenant. "Baek," he said. "I need to know who wiped the East Hallway camera on Tuesday morning." Baek's voice was smooth, steady, the voice of a man who had been his right hand for 11 years. "I'll look into it personally." "Good," Dong-soo said. He hung up. He did not know, could not know yet, that Baek already knew exactly who had wiped that camera, because Baek had given the clearance himself. What happened next moved fast, the way disasters always do when they've been building slowly for a long time. By noon, The media had it. The headline hit 3 outlets simultaneously. Never a coincidence. And it read, "Crime Lord's maid manipulates financial records." Below it, a series of photographs. Annabelle and Dong-soo in the lobby, a security frame, badly cropped, positioned to imply something that wasn't there. A fabricated employment document labeling her temporary domestic help, unverified status. And an anonymous tip circulating across 2 financial news blogs, suggesting she was not legally authorized to work in Korea. Annabelle saw it on her phone at 12:17 p.m. She was in the basement laundry room, which was where she went when she needed to think. Because the basement laundry room was the one place in this building where no one looked for her. She sat on a plastic chair between 2 industrial machines, and she looked at her face on a screen above a headline that made her a villain, and she felt something happen in her chest that she refused to call devastation. She had been here before, not this exact version, but the shape of it, the specific mechanics of watching your reputation get disassembled in public by people who were never going to put their names on it. She knew this shape. She had learned it the hard way in a glass and steel office in Manhattan, when she had done everything right, and it had still cost her everything. She thought about her nephew sitting in a classroom right now, studying for an exam. She thought about Adais, who used to say, "Belle, you are the strongest person I know." And she used to answer, "I'm not strong, I'm just tired of falling." She pressed her fingers over the bruise on her wrist, 4 fingers. She knew whose they were. She had known since Tuesday. She just hadn't known what it meant yet. Now she was beginning to understand. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You should leave before this gets worse. This is a warning, not a threat." She stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, "Who are you?" No response. She put her phone in her pocket and sat for another minute in the hum of the machines. Then she stood, straightened her uniform, and walked upstairs. Because she had a nephew who needed tuition paid by Friday, and she was not going to solve that from a laundry room. Dong-soo saw the headlines at the same time as everyone else, and what he felt, the sensation that moved through him quietly, like a current, was not exactly anger. Anger was what he felt with rivals, with betrayal, with the kind of threats he was accustomed to navigating. This was something else. This was the particular coldness of watching someone methodically destroy a person who had not done anything wrong. He called his communications director. "Prepare a response." "Sir, the nature of the allegations. She is a senior compliance consultant, contracted through my office. Any suggestion otherwise is legally actionable." He paused. "Prepare the documentation to match that description and have it filed by 3 o'clock. That will involve retroactively." "I know what it will involve." His voice was flat. "You do it." He was not doing it for strategic reasons. He told himself he was, because strategy was a language he understood, and honesty was a language that still made him cautious. But the truth was simpler and more inconvenient than strategy. He had seen a bruise. He had seen the shape of it, and something in him, something that predated his empire, predated his training, predated every lesson about control and containment, and never letting the personal bleed into the professional, had simply not been able to ignore it. He called Bayek. "I've seen the media situation," Bayek said immediately. "It's bad. Whoever leaked this knew the exact pressure points. Immigration status, financial misconduct, inappropriate closeness with you. They hit all 3 in one cycle. This is not opportunistic journalism." "No," Dong-soo said. "It's not. Do you have a theory? I'm working one. He kept his voice even. What did you find on the camera? I'm still running it. The clearance trail is complicated, routed through 3 access points. A pause. It may take until tomorrow. Tonight, Dong-soo said. I need it tonight. Understood. He hung up. He stood at his window. His phone was already full of messages from family elders, from the O-political team, from 2 board members asking for clarity on the media situation. The shareholders' summit was in 4 days. The arranged engagement announcement, the one everyone was waiting for, the one that would consolidate the political alliance, was expected to happen there. And in the middle of all of it, he kept seeing a woman set down a teacup with perfectly steady hands while carrying a bruise she hadn't shown anyone. He called his head of security. Find Annabelle Chinello, wherever she is in this building. Make sure she hasn't left, and don't make it obvious. Yes, sir. He turned from the window. He had an empire to run, and a federal audit in 3 days, and a rival family circling his shipping lines. He also had a compliance analyst hiding in his domestic staff who had built and then deliberately buried a legal case that would have made her famous and rich because she had chosen a different kind of integrity, the invisible kind. And he was beginning to understand that everything about her that he had initially overlooked was the thing he most needed to see. She was in the East Corridor on the 4th floor when his security head found her. Mr. Young requests your presence, the man said quietly. Private elevator C. Annabelle kept walking. Tell him I'm working. A pause. Ma'am, I heard you, she said. Tell him I'll come when I'm done with this floor. She finished the floor. Then she took the elevator. He was in the smaller office, not the main one with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the mahogany and the city view. This one was quieter. Bookshelves, a couch, a table with 2 chairs. It looked like the room of a person who was allowed to occasionally not perform. He was standing when she entered. Jacket off, sleeves rolled up. He looked, and she registered this carefully, neutrally, filing it away, like a man who was actually thinking, not managing. Sit down, he said. Then, immediately, please. She noted the please. She sat. He put his phone on the table and slid it toward her. The headline, the photographs. She looked at them, and then back at him. I've seen them, she said. I know. He sat across from her. I'm responding officially. Framing you as a contracted compliance consultant. It will neutralize the employment claim. It will create a different problem, she said. If I'm on record as a compliance consultant, then my prior work at Meridian becomes relevant background, and Meridian will push back on that characterization. He looked at her steadily. You know about Meridian's informal network. I built the case they settled. Yes, I know about their network. Silence. Why didn't you sue them? He asked. She looked at him for a long moment. It was a personal question. He knew it was a personal question. He was asking it anyway, and he was not asking it with the clinical detachment of an executive assembling information. He was asking it the way you ask something when you genuinely want to understand. She had not been asked things that way in a long time. Because a lawsuit would have made me visible, she said. And visible is dangerous when you don't control the narrative. She paused. I had a nephew to take care of. I had to choose between being right in a courtroom and being functional in the world. She folded her hands on the table. Invisible is underestimated. Underestimated is useful. Not this week, he said quietly. No, she agreed. Not this week. He looked at the phone, then back at her. The Bruise, he said. I need you to tell me who. Why? Because it didn't happen in a vacuum. Someone in my building put their hands on you, had the footage wiped, and now there are media stories with your photo running on financial news platforms. If these are connected. She looked at him. She had spent 2 days running this exact calculation, deciding whether to trust the chain of cause and effect she could see clearly, deciding whether speaking it aloud would make it better or worse, deciding whether this man, this particular man in this particular position, was capable of doing anything useful with the truth. She had not decided yet, but she was closer than she'd been 2 days ago. "I need something from you first," she said. He waited. "My nephew, Obi. He's 17. He's enrolled in a school here on a student-dependent visa. The tuition is overdue and they'll withdraw his enrollment by Friday." She looked at him directly. "I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for the advance on a consulting contract that you're apparently now prepared to backdate anyway." He looked at her for one beat. Then he reached across the table and wrote a figure on a piece of paper, slid it toward her. She looked at it. It was 3 times what she had been about to ask for. She pushed it back. "Half of that." "Annabelle, half," she said. "I don't take what I haven't earned." He looked at her. Something moved in his expression that was not quite a smile, but was adjacent to it. "Half," he agreed. She put the paper in her pocket. Then she said, "It was Oh Soo-jin." The room went very quiet. "She came to the East Corridor Tuesday morning," Annabelle continued, her voice even. "I was there for the breakfast setup. She waited until the corridor was empty." She paused. "She grabbed my wrist and she said, her exact words, 'Women like you don't climb. You're carried,' then discarded." Dong-soo was very still. "She wanted me to react," Annabelle said. "Raise my voice, make a scene, give her something she could use. I didn't." "What did you do?" "I said, 'Good morning, Madam O,' and I finished the breakfast setup." He was looking at her, and she could not fully read his expression. Not anger. Or not only anger. Something more complicated. "She had the footage wiped," he said. "She had clearance too. You granted it when she joined as a board observer." "Yes." His jaw was tight. "I did." He stood, walked to the window, a smaller window in this room, looking at a different angle of the city. She watched his back, the line of his shoulders. "She is the front runner for the political alliance," he said slowly. "The engagement my family has been building toward for 3 years. The one everyone in this building is waiting for me to announce at the shareholder summit." "I know," Annabelle said. "You knew before today." "I've worked here for 7 months." He turned. "And you still told me." She met his eyes. "You asked." He looked at her for a long moment, long enough that she felt it, not uncomfortably, just consciously. The way you feel the weight of someone's full attention when you have spent a long time being looked through. "There's something else," she said. "Tell me." She reached into her jacket pocket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table. Printed documents. A chain of financial transactions. "I've been gathering this for 3 months," she said, "before I understood what it connected to. I was building a case around the hospital that treated my sister." She paused. "St. Hyunjae Medical. She came in with symptoms that any competent attending should have flagged for immediate intervention. They dismissed her. Twice. She died from a condition that was entirely treatable if caught in the first 48 hours. Dong-soo sat back down. "St. Hyunjae is part of a non-profit hospital network," Annabelle continued. "That network receives philanthropic funding, rooted through a charitable trust. That trust," she said quietly, "received capital from your foundation's shipping philanthropy arm 18 months ago. The silence in the room was complete. "You didn't know," she said. It was not a question. She had been watching him long enough to know the difference between a man who had done something and a man who was just learning he had. "No," he said. His voice was careful. "The money in your foundation is clean. The pipeline it passed through wasn't." She turned the paper toward him. "The hospital network has been using philanthropic status to funnel money from working-class community healthcare into a holding structure that reduces its liability for malpractice claims, which means families like mine." She stopped, let a breath out. When they dismiss a patient, when there's negligence, the claim hits a financial wall that was specifically engineered to make legal action not worth pursuing. Dong-soo looked at the paper. "Your sister," he said. "She had no idea," Annabelle said. "She trusted the hospital. She was a good person who believed the system would take care of her if she showed up and followed the rules." Her voice did not break, but it was close. "She followed the rules." He was quiet for a long moment. "How long have you been sitting on this?" he asked. "Since I traced the funding pipeline 2 months ago. I've been verifying independently before." She stopped. "Before what?" She looked at him. "Before deciding what to do with it." Another pause. Then he said, "There were encrypted messages between you and an individual connected to a federal investigation into my operations." She did not look surprised. He had access to her communications. She had known this was possible. "Yes," she said. "Who?" "A federal investigator named Park Ji-won. He's been running a parallel inquiry into the hospital network's financial laundering structure. We have been sharing documentation." She looked at him steadily. "Not about your empire. About the hospital. Those are different investigations that happen to share a funding trail. People will not see it as different." "I know that," she said. "I knew it when I started. I made a calculation." "What calculation?" "That the people who died because of that hospital mattered more than my own comfort." She said it plainly, without drama. "My sister mattered more than my safety. Families like hers, like mine, who get dismissed and die and never get justice because the system that hurt them also owns the process of accountability." She looked at him. "I wasn't betraying you, and I was doing what I was trained to do." The room held all of it for a moment. Then Dong-soo said quietly, "You could have come to me." And she said just as quietly, "I didn't know if I could trust you." The honesty of it sat between them. He nodded slowly, not agreeing, accepting. "And now?" She looked at him. "I'm still deciding," she said. He didn't push. That, she noted, was the right answer. If you're still here right now, you're not just watching. You're feeling this. Be honest with me in the comments. Have you ever trusted a system that failed you or someone you love? Don't give me the polite answer. Give me the real one. And if this moment feels personal, subscribe and be part of a space where stories like hers are not forgotten. The people who stay through moments like this understand something deeper. Outside the building, the media cycle was accelerating. 2 more outlets had picked up the story. A third had added a manufactured detail, a source close to the organization, claiming that Annabelle had been seen accessing restricted financial records after hours. It was a lie built around a truth. She had been in the building at night. She had been accessing records, but not Dong-soo's. She had been building the hospital case. On the 4th floor, 2 of Dong-soo's board members were in private conversation. One of them, a senior member who had been with the organization for 15 years, was saying quietly, "This is getting messy. If the federal audit connects her to the investigation, the whole summit is at risk." The other board member, younger, recently promoted, said, "Dong-soo seems unwilling to distance himself." That's a problem. Yes. Neither of them said what they were both thinking, which was that someone had moved with extraordinary precision to create exactly this crisis at exactly this moment, and that the timing, 3 days before a federal audit, 4 days before a shareholder summit, was too clean to be accidental. Bayek was in his private office when his phone vibrated. He looked at the message, read it twice. He deleted it. Then he called Dong-soo's head of security from a secondary line with a request that had nothing to do with the camera investigation and everything to do with making sure that certain pieces of the financial trail Annabelle had assembled would not reach the boardroom before the summit. He had been very careful. He had been careful for 11 years. He had built Dong-soo's trust methodically, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. Because trust was the most valuable currency in this world, and once you had it, you could spend it on almost anything. He had been spending it for 3 years, slowly, carefully. The arranged marriage to Oh Soo-jin was the final piece. It would consolidate the political alliance. It would give Bayek the one thing he still lacked, legitimate political protection that would make him untouchable, even if the organization's financial structures ever came under real scrutiny. Dong-soo's personal feelings were irrelevant. They had always been irrelevant. Dong-soo was the instrument. The empire was the mechanism. Bayek was the architect. And this woman, this quiet, precise, invisible woman with her compliance training and her hospital documents and the inconvenient way that Dong-soo looked at her, was a variable that had not been in the calculation. He needed to remove her before she dismantled everything. He had tried the subtle approach. He would need to be less subtle now. Annabelle was back on the 4th floor when her phone rang. Unknown number, different from the morning's message. She almost let it go to voicemail. Then something made her answer. Ms. Chinello. A woman's voice, clipped, professional. "My name is Park Ji-won. We've been exchanging documents for 2 months, and I think it's time we met in person." A pause. "Events have accelerated. Someone is moving to destroy your documentation before the audit window opens." Annabelle stepped into a quiet corner of the hallway. "You're compromised as a source if we meet," she said quietly. "I'm already compromised. Someone accessed my communication logs this morning. Within the next 24 hours, whoever is behind this will know the full scope of what we've been building." Park's voice was urgent but controlled. "You need to secure your copies, all of them, not digitally." "I have physical copies," Annabelle said. "Where?" She paused. "Somewhere safe," she said carefully. "Off-site." "Yes." "Good." A breath. "Ms. Chinello, what we have is significant. The hospital network, the funding structure, the liability engineering. This isn't a small case. This is a systemic fraud that has resulted in preventable deaths across 4 hospitals in 2 countries. Park's voice dropped slightly. "Your sister is not the only one." Annabelle closed her eyes for 2 seconds and opened them. "I know," she said quietly. "Then you understand why it has to move forward, regardless of what happens with the media situation, regardless of what it costs personally." A pause. "I'm sorry. About the media. That's not from our side." "I know whose side it's from," Annabelle said. After she hung up, she stood for a moment in the quiet corridor. She could hear faintly the sound of the city below, the relentless hum of soul. She thought about Adaeze. Her sister had been 34 years old. She had had a laugh that filled whatever room she was in, and a habit of calling Annabelle at 11 p.m. just to say something small, something ordinary. I made jollof rice today. You know, the kind Mama used to burn the bottom of? The good kind. I burned the bottom. It was perfect. The hospital had dismissed her symptoms twice. In the third time she went in, she did not come out. Obi had been 15. He had sat in a hospital waiting room for 9 hours before someone thought to come and tell him. Annabelle had flown in from New York. She had sat with him in that waiting room, already emptied, already cleaned, already moving on. And she had held her nephew's hand, and she had not cried because he needed her not to. She had not cried until she was on the plane back to New York to pack her apartment. And then she had started building a case, because she did not know how to grieve without also knowing why. And she could not accept why, without also asking who. And once she knew who, she could not unknow it. She was very tired. But she was also, she recognized, exactly where she needed to be. She checked the time. The shareholder summit was in 4 days. The federal audit opened in 3. She had documents in a storage unit on the south side of the city, in a waterproof lockbox that she had installed herself on a Friday afternoon 3 months ago, when she had begun to understand that what she was building was going to make someone very afraid. She needed to make sure those documents were still there. She texted Obi. How was the exam? 3 dots. Then, I think I did okay. Auntie Belle, the school called again. I know, it's handled. Don't worry. A pause. Then, you always say that. She almost typed, because it always has to be. She typed instead, because I always mean it. Go to sleep. I'll call you tonight. She put the phone in her pocket, down the hall, around the corner. In the boardroom that still held the ghost of the morning's crisis meeting, someone was printing a document. The document was a draft press release, prepared for Dong-soo's signature, announcing his engagement to Oh Soo-jin. It was dated for tomorrow. It had been prepared by Baek. Dong-soo had not been shown it yet. She found out about the press release the same way she found out about most things in this building. She was invisible, and invisible people hear everything. It was the junior communications assistant, young, nervous, perpetually overcaffeinated, who left the printed draft on the copier tray by mistake while answering his phone in the hallway. Annabelle was passing with a linen cart. She saw the letterhead. She saw the date. She saw the name Oh Soo-jin in the second paragraph next to the word engagement. She did not stop walking. She did not change her expression. She pushed the cart to the end of the hall, turned the corner, and stood very still for approximately 4 seconds. Then she kept moving. Because what she felt, the specific sensation that moved through her chest, sharp and unwelcome, that she absolutely refused to examine, was not her business. It was not relevant. It was the kind of feeling that happened to people who forgot the terms of the situation they were actually in, which was, she was a woman holding documents that could dismantle a hospital network built on the deaths of people like her sister, and that was the only thing that mattered. That was the only thing she was allowed to let matter. She was not the protagonist of a love story. She was the protagonist of a survival story. Those were different genres. She finished the floor, returned the cart, and went to find Dong-soo. He was in the main office when she knocked, and 2 junior staff members were leaving as she entered. They passed her without looking, which was normal, because she was domestic staff, which was the same as furniture. And then, it was just the 2 of them in the room, with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the city below, and the tea she had made him 7 hours ago. Cold now, still on the corner of his desk. He looked up. "Close the door," he said. She closed it. She did not waste time. Your communications team has a draft press release announcing your engagement to Oh Soo-jin, dated tomorrow. His expression shifted. Not surprise. Something more careful than surprise. Where did you see that? Copier tray, 4th floor. He was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and picked up his phone. 3 seconds later, she heard a voicemail playing. His communications director came from this morning saying, Mr. Bayek has requested we prepare the engagement announcement for final review. He indicated you had approved the timing. He set the phone down. The room was very still. I did not approve the timing, he said. I know, she said. How do you know? She looked at him steadily. Because if you had decided to marry Oh Soo-jin, you would not have spent this morning doing what you've been doing. She paused. You would have found a quiet way to make this problem disappear. You would have protected the alliance at my expense. He looked at her. You've been watching me. I've been watching everyone, she said. It's what I do. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking out. She could see his reflection in the glass, the tight set of his jaw, the particular stillness of someone thinking at high speed. Beck, he said. I think so. He turned. You think it's Beck? The camera clearance had to come from someone with access above board level. The media leak was too precisely timed. Hitting all 3 pressure points simultaneously requires preparation, not improvisation. The engagement announcement being moved forward without your knowledge. She kept her voice even. Someone is accelerating a timeline. They needed you married to Oh Soo-jin before the audit opens, and they needed me gone before I could tell you why. Dong-soo was looking at her with the full weight of his attention. Why? He said. Why does the marriage matter to someone else more than it matters to me? Because Oh Soo-jin's family has political protection that extends to federal oversight bodies. If you are married into that alliance before the audit, any investigation into the hospital funding pipeline gets significantly more complicated to pursue. She looked at him. The financial laundering I traced doesn't just run through the hospital network, it runs deeper, and the person at the center of it needs that political cover. Silence. Baek, he said again. Quieter this time. The word had a different quality now. Not a question, not an accusation. The specific weight of a name you've trusted for 11 years, becoming something else in your mouth. I'm not certain, she said. I have a chain of evidence, not a confession. Show me. She had printed copies in her room. She had not kept them on any device connected to the building's network. She had printed them at a public library 3 weeks ago and kept them in an envelope that she brought with her every day in the inside pocket of her uniform jacket. She had not known, when she started carrying them, that this was the moment she was carrying them toward.